So we are unmuted. Good evening. Welcome to the virtual interested stakeholder meeting on hazard mitigation analysis and emergency response planning for battery energy storage system projects. Because of the weather, most county staff will be virtual, and I'd like to let everybody know that we will have representation from Growth Management, Office of the Emergency Management, subject matter experts, fire department, and from our communications team. I'd like to say some important meeting announcements. First of all, I'd like to thank you to many interested community stakeholders who have brought to our attention their concerns. Their input and perspective is very valuable and very much appreciated by everybody here at the county. This interested stakeholder meeting will address four main topics today: the hazardous mitigation analysis, the emergency response plan, questions for the Office of Emergency Management, and fire department operations. After the presentation from the questions that were received last week, we will have an open question and answer forum also available for the participants. And we will try to adjourn no later than 8 p.m. due to the inclement weather. As you can see, some of us are here in person, downtown Santa Fe. So I hope you understand that 8 o'clock is the time where we plan on adjourning this meeting at the latest. So I'd also like to say that today's meeting is not a public hearing as contemplated by the SLDC or by the county's open meetings resolution. It is an informal meeting to share and discuss appropriate standards for fire departments and other emergency response teams, particularly regarding solar facilities and battery energy storage systems pursuant to National Fire Protection Association 855 Annex G, which provides best practices for fire departments nationwide. While these best practices provided by the NFPA are not mandatory, these are useful guidelines to follow. To be clear, information provided this evening is not part of the record in any pending application. It is not evidence in any pending application. And while we strive to be accurate and transparent, information is subject to change with the passage of time and as circumstances change. We have received well over 100 questions in advance of this evening's meeting. We will not be able to answer all questions, but we'll focus on those questions that were most frequently asked and are most directly related to the topic for this meeting. Some of our discussion will focus on the unique attributes and risks associated with battery energy storage systems, which from now on I'm going to be calling it BESS, and the standards that have been adopted and or suggested for such facilities, such as NFPA 855. Please understand, however, that we will not discuss the specific application for the Rancho Viejo solar project. It is inappropriate to discuss a pending application with interested third parties outside of the public hearing framework, particularly when the applicant is not present. We'll start with some legal questions that were asked last week. We're going to start sharing our screen. First question is, why does county continue to allow AES to redact information? Will the county provide the public with access to the data labeled proprietary that ATAR reviewed for its October 9 evaluation? The county neither allows nor disallows the redaction of documents. Occasionally, An applicant provides documents as part of an application and notifies the county that it considers certain information contained in the documents to be confidential. In those instances, if a request that covers such documentation is made under the Inspections of Public Records Act, the county notifies the applicant of the request. At that time, the applicant can elect to seek protection of such information through judicial proceedings. If an applicant goes that route, the county will abide by whatever resolution is reached in that proceeding. If an applicant does not seek to protect such information, the records will be released. There has been no ruling from the First Judicial District Court declaring that any member or members of the public is or are entitled to information or documents in the Rancho Viejo Solar application. Next question is, describe the roles of the fire marshal and ATAR in CUP process. CUP stands for Conditional Use Permit process. Will they be witnessed at the December 4th hearing? Neither office has been notified that it will be called on to testify. We are still 4 weeks before the hearing, so that might change. Ordinance 2023-06, Section 7C states, Ordinance 2023-06, Section 7C states, Section 103.1, General, the Fire Prevention Division of the Santa Fe County Fire Department, we're going to call it the division, is under the direction of the fire marshal. The function of the division includes implementation, administration, and enforcement of the fire code. Next question is, are the fire marshal and ATAR Fire making recommendations to growth management or to the hearing officer? No. As reflected in the October 11th, 2024 conditional use permit plan review from fire, the fire department and ATAR Fire simply concluded that a sufficient level of information has been provided by the applicant to validate the issuance of a conditional use permit. Did the applicants request trade secret protection for the proprietary data? The applicant simply notified the county that it considers the information to be proprietary and confidential. As stated above, if it seeks to avoid disclosure of the information, the request will be made in a judicial proceeding and not to the county. The county will not make a determination regarding the protection or disclosure of such information. All right, now we're going to talk about some of the common themes that we've seen from all the questions asked. First of all, the purpose of this meeting today is to hear perspective and input pursuant to NFPA 855 Annex G from interested stakeholders. Also, I'd like to let you know that the Fire Code Official Authority lies in the enforcement of the Santa Fe County Fire Code, as previously stated, as adopted by the Board of County Commissioners and other state and national laws and regulations. There were some questions about homeowners insurance and research on other jurisdictions and states. So please be aware that Annex G of NFPA 855 guidelines are best practices that identify useful standards and procedures, but which is not mandatory. Approval of a conditional use permit application is at the discretion of the Santa Fe County governing body, for example, Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioners. Also, Santa Fe County is aware of many homeowners facing challenges relative to home insurance, but the cost does not seem to be linked to BESS installations, BESS being battery energy storage systems. Finally, fire departments across the nation have adopted or are in the process of adopting the latest version of the International Fire Code and NFPA 855. Submittal of both a hazard mitigation analysis and emergency response plan, including staff and emergency responders training to the authority having jurisdiction, is required. There is a question here about growth management, but it also applies to fire. So you can read it. It's referencing if this project was to be approved by the governing body, if the application further review, if a further review would be conducted for the project with the filing of an application for a development permit. If Jordan is.
Yes, Drama, thank you. So if the CUP is approved and the project moves forward, they will apply for another development permit, essentially is their building permit. And at that point in time, all the same reviews that it currently is going through will be going through as part of that administrative approval for the development permit for construction. And then at that point in time, if it is approved by the county, it goes to CID for another review.
Thank you. As far as the fire department is concerned, should this conditional use permit application be approved by the governing body, the fire department, in collaboration with the subject matter experts, will exhaustively and rigorously review and evaluate for compliance with the highest level of safety in accordance with local, state, and national codes and standards, as are all projects with Santa Fe County. The full and complete construction document package would be submitted for review and approval by the Santa Fe County Fire Department prior to commencing project construction. This is established in Chapter 1 of the Fire Code as adopted by the Santa Fe County Fire Department. Oops. All right, so now we're gonna dive into the topics. We're gonna start with the hazard mitigation analysis topic. So the question was, Clean Energy Associates published a study this year done over the last 6 years and found 26% of BESS units had defects in the fire suppression systems and 18% had defects in the thermal management systems. How can the county rely on the fire department approval of this facility when it is clear from scientific research that code compliance does not stop systems from having defects that lead to thermal runaway? Issues identified by the CEA report can be mitigated through commissioning and ongoing inspection, testing, and maintenance, which is required by NFPA 855. The CEA identified issues at factories. These systems were not yet in the field and tested or commissioned. Matthew Pies of the National Northwest National Laboratory, in an August 2024 seminar, Explosion Control Compliance in BESS Design, states, clean agents are only good at suppressing visible flame. They do not have enough cooling capabilities to get into deeply seated thermal runaway modules. Isn't it the case that NOVEC 1230 does not put out thermal runaway? The proposed system is not classified as fire suppression or extinguishing system as it pertains to NFPA 855. It is a thermal runaway propagation prevention system. The NOVEC is injected at the module level, not at a container level. Matt Pies is referring to container level fire suppression. Container level fire suppression is not provided on this project. The proposed NOVEC system has been validated via UL Underwriter Laboratories 9548 testing. Installation and unit level testing for this project has indicated that when a single cell goes into thermal runaway, it does not spread to adjacent cells due to the NOVEC direct injection system. According to the hazardous mitigation analysis, in accordance with 2021 International Wild and Urban Interface Code and Santa Fe County Ordinance 2023-06, a defensible space of 30 feet is required around the BESS enclosure given the moderate hazard. The current design does not show 30 feet of defensible space. What is going to be done to extend the defensible space in this facility, and what does the ordinance require when the area is a high fire risk? The fuel modification distances increase as the fire hazard severity area increases with a minimum distance of 30 feet. So the short answer is they will meet the minimum of 30 feet. The intent of fuel modification is to create a defensible space so that an approaching wildland fire cannot easily move through the defensible space and ignite the structure. The defensible space also provides firefighters an area to set up hose lines between the structure and the approaching fire. Reducing the density of brush and undergrowth is necessary to reduce the intensity of the fire, reduce flame lengths, and reduce radiant heat. There is some, this is a long question, but the one requirement is fires and products of combustion will not prevent occupants from evacuating to a safe location. The conformance from the HMA was that the enclosure features a sufficient quantity of safety barriers to limit the rate of propagation of an escalating fire or thermal runaway event and provide adequate situational awareness to facilitate occupants to permit evacuation to a safe location. These are non-walk-in containers, so they are not going to be staffed by anyone. Number two, requirement, deflagration hazards will be addressed by an explosion control or other system conformance. This analysis has identified that a propagating cell failure event poses a deflagration hazard. The enclosure will be equipped with an NFPA 68 and potentially NFPA 69 compliant deflagration venting system to release the combustion gases and pressure resulting from a deflagration within the enclosure so that structural mechanical damage is minimized. So the question is, who determined what the appropriate criteria would be for the analysis conducted by Fire Marshal Bly and ATAR? How were the appropriate criteria determined? The acceptance criteria are defined by NFPA 855 2023 edition, section 4.4, and the 2021 International Fire Code, section 1207.1.4.2. These are national consensus standards. Was anything reviewed other than the documents and codes cited in the ATAR letter? The safety data sheets for the chemicals that will be stored and used. Also the safety data sheets for the chemicals that will be stored and used at the site. The proximity of the natural gas transmission line that runs between the project site and the western edge of El Dorado. All items reviewed by ATAR Fire are outlined in the review letter. The documents were then compared against the applicable codes and standards. NFPA 855 does not require review of SDSs or safety data sheets. Environmentally sensitive area indicate whether Fire Marshal Bly or ATAR consider the proximity of the battery storage units to the environmentally sensitive area. NFPA 855, and by the way, anytime I mention NFPA 855 is going to be the 2023 edition, and the 2021 International Fire Code do not provide explicit requirements regarding energy storage system installations in environmentally sensitive areas. Separation distances are required by the 2021 International Fire Code and NFPA 855 have been adhered to. Do Fire Marshal Bly and ATAR Fire believe it was appropriate to have used data from the Albuquerque International Airport instead of data sourced closer to the proposed site of the Rancho Viejo Solar project? Choosing a data source closer to the site is not expected to impact results of the HMA. Wind is not used for any modeling as part of the HMA and is used in a qualitative manner. Energy storage system safety is a layered approach. Annex G of NFPA 855. Did Fire Marshal Bly and ATAR Fire apply Annex G of NFPA 855 in its review of the AES hazard mitigation analysis? If so, identify the sections and describe how the sections were applied. ATAR Fire considered Annex G conceptually. In some instances, it is referenced directly in review comments, for example, comments 13, 42, 83, and 85, as part of their review. In total, they have a total of 93 comments. Annex G is non-mandatory text that is for information only. The NFPA 855 Technical Committee places items that do not rise to the level of our requirement or are simply extra information in the annex. Note that the absence of the use of the word shall in annex material. Also reference the NFPA manual of style for more information on the intent of annex material. Did Fire Marshal Bly and Attar review the bespoke fire and deflagration test results referenced in section 4.2, page 9 of the AES hazard mitigation analysis? The short answer is yes. NOVEC 1230. Describe the form, whether it is liquid, powder, describe the form, will NOVEC 1230 be stored at the site in advance of its use as a fire suppressant? NOVEC 1230 is a gas. The next question is, describe the container in which the NOVEC 1230 will be stored on site and the potential for leaks or other discharges prior to its use as a fire suppressant. Each container will have a dedicated NOVEC cylinder. The system will be inspected and commissioned in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and the applicable portions of NFPA 2001, as is the accepted in industry practice. All components of the NOVEC system are included in and have been evaluated as part of the installation level UL 9540A test. Threat from the power conversion system units being located. So hazard mitigation analysis, page C4, I guess, describes a threat from the power conversion system units being located 8 feet from each pair of enclosures and could pose a potential fire hazard risk to the enclosures, as well as standby generator being located 21 feet from one of the enclosures. So the question is, what is required to make a change in the design layout to correct for this threat? Power conversion equipment, which is composed of electrical equipment, typically has no heat release rates. You can reference NUREG 2178, for example. These heat release rates and associated heat fluxes are generally not sufficient to heat battery cells inside a metal insulated container 8 feet away to above the thermal runaway temperature. Attar Fire's review points out 93 open issues, and many of these issues have to do with the basic design of this facility. So the first question, how can the Santa Fe County Fire Department possibly have given their approval for this facility without the answers to these issues, as well as unredacted documents having to do with battery safety? The fire department has not given their approval. It has deemed the conditional use permit application complete based on the review by Attar Fire. However, all of the items in the review letter by Attar Fire must be satisfactorily addressed prior to commissioning of the facility, should a COOP approval be granted by the Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioners. The second question, HMA page 20 states that it does not evaluate the hazards associated with the construction, offsite storage, and shipping of the BESS enclosures. They neglect to mention the more serious hazard of shipping lithium-ion batteries to this facility. Transport of lithium-ion batteries is regulated by the Department of Transportation. HMA page 16 indicates, once a propagating failure event has occurred, the smoke detection, gas detection, and BMS battery management system data availability mitigation barriers act to provide situational awareness to facility operators and emergency responders. The strength of these barriers will be dependent upon site installation conditions. So how can the strength of what are supposed to be automatic detention systems be dependent on installation conditions, and how will this be avoided completely? All systems will be reviewed for compliance with applicable nationally recognized standards, as well as inspected and tested fully. And the number 50 of the 93 open issues covered in the Attar Fire, it points out that the direct injection system activates on smoke according to the hazardous mitigation analysis. Isn't it too late to apply the direct injection system if smoke is already appearing? And shouldn't the direct injection system be triggered by an increase in temperature that precedes the release of gas? The performance of the system is validated by the UL 9540A testing as it pertains to mitigating cell-to-cell propagation. The comment pertains to something specific mentioned in the HMA regarding the statement that this will increase the amount of time of detection. Qatar Fire disagrees with the statement, but it does not invalidate the performance and safety of the BESS as a whole. Comment 50 requires an editorial review to the HMA. How is that Qatar Fire review did not know that the site would be unmanned? Qatar Fire did not assume the site would be manned, rather was requesting an update to the emergency response plan based on information presented in the conditional use permit application. Shouldn't it be part of county conditions that the site be manned? And isn't it true that all the incident planning is inconsistent with an unmanned site? NFPA 55 and the 2021 IFC, International Fire Code, do not require an AES site to be manned. Data from various systems are monitored by a constantly attended location as required by NFPA 855 and the International Fire Code. NAVEC 1230 does not put out fires. So where is the fire control system? Why has this comment not received critical review by County Fire Department? This comment is requesting an editorial clarification in the hazardous mitigation analysis. Qatar Fire agrees. NAVEC 1230 does not extinguish lithium-ion fires when used for container-based fire suppression. The National Fire Protection Association 855 committee has recognized this. Future editions of NFPA 55 will prohibit this. Reference the NFPA website, NFPA 855, next edition. Tab, view public comment for second draft. Section 4.9 has been revised to remove NFPA 2001 and NFPA 2010 systems. Now, NAVEC 1230 is provided at a module level to mitigate cell-to-cell propagation and is considered a thermal runaway propagation prevention system. The NAVEC system being provided by AES is not required by code, yet has demonstrable benefits via UL 9540A testing, showing it limits cell-to-cell propagation to a single cell. Since the fire risk is, among others, depending on the number of structures, has AES made public how many solar panels will be placed, how many BESS containers will, with how many battery cells, and where the containers will be located? The HMA provides details on the number of containers, the locations of the containers, and the number of cells in each container and module. These items, among many others, are considered in the HMA. Solar panels are remotely located from the BESS containers. There are two standards for safety testing of BESS, UL 9540, which outlines energy storage systems and equipment, and UL 9548, which evaluate the fire safety hazards associated with thermal runaway within battery systems. In the draft preliminary HMA report, dated August 13, 2024, under applicable codes and standards, it is mentioned that UL 9540A testing was performed against the fourth edition, November 2019. Why was testing not performed against the July 15, 2022 edition? The latest published edition of UL 9540A is the fourth edition, dated November 12, 2019. The testing under this project has been performed to UL 9540A, fourth edition. The latest published edition for UL 9540 is the third edition, dated June 28, 2023. Why are these results not available on the Underwriters Laboratories online certification directory at that online address? UL 9540A is a test, not a listing or certification. UL 9540A results are not typically published by nationally recognized testing laboratories online. Results are given to the client that requests the test. Regarding the product certification standard, UL 9540, UL 95, regarding the product certification standard, UL 9540. So UL 9540 listing can be achieved through UL or any other national recognized testing laboratory, like an NRTL, that is certified by OSHA to UL 9540. For this project, AES has used the nationally recognized testing laboratory called SGS for the UL 9540 listing. The UL online certifications directory only shows products listed specifically by Underwriters Laboratories and not other OSHA nationally recognized testing laboratories such as SGS, CSA, TUV, etc. Why has no additional testing been performed against UL 9540? Testing is currently being performed and is nearly complete. The BESS units used on this project will be UL 9540 listed, and certification is in progress. Mr. Bartlett, he is a subject matter expert with ATAR-FIRE, plan on acquiring the formal reports from Sangro and Wärtsilä. He also acquired reports from the fires in AES facilities in Surprise, Chandler, and Escondido. The full-scale fire testing performed by Sangro and Wärtsilä is under NDA non-disclosure agreement and has not been released to Mr. Bartlett. There has not been an investigation report issued for Escondido. If a horn stroke of a container is alarming, wait 6 hours. This is according to the emergency response plan, page 5. It says, if a horn stroke of a container is alarming, wait 6 hours before approaching with AES Rancho Viejo personnel approval and escort. How is the fire department supposed to use water to cool the containers immediately adjacent to the burning container if they are standing at the front gate for 6 hours? How fast is AES required to get to the facility in an emergency? Cannot find any reference in their documents. The fire department is in the process of developing standard operating procedures and guidelines to address this and other potential scenarios. Should this application be approved by the Santa Fe County governing body, the emergency response plan shall undergo further evaluation of more specific guidelines. HMA page 8, fire scenario 3. BESS fire incident indicates 24,000 gallons of water could 50% of the time provide one handline for 4 hours, or a fog nozzle could provide 2 handlines flowing at a lower rate 50% of the time for 4 hours. Remember that the storage tank holds 30,000 gallons. This is totally insufficient to fight a lithium-ion battery fire, which burns anywhere from 24 hours to several weeks, like the Otay Mesa in California, fire recently. Why would the HMA only cover 4 hours of firefighting, and where are thousands more gallons of water going to come from to immediately continue to fight this type of fire? The fire department has the capability to bring water to any location in Santa Fe County by way of tanker shuttle operations. In addition to the 30,000 gallons at the site, which are dedicated for fire protection, water supply, the average water brought to the scene by first fire alarm responding units is 10,000 gallons. When a second alarm is issued, an average of 5,000 additional gallons of water is brought to the scene. Once on scene, a tender shuttle operation will be put into operation to maintain 250 gallons of water per minute for 2 hours. This question was asking to confirm some of this data. Now, while I respond to this question, people are welcome to read through that question. But also keep in mind that we have district members, volunteers, who could provide additional resources. We also have mutual aid agreements with the City of Santa Fe and other neighboring fire departments when needed. The Santa Fe County Office of Emergency Management would coordinate with the Red Cross, Sheriff's Office, and other agencies as needed. In the event of a shelter-in-place order, Office of Emergency Management would issue a reverse 911 system call that allows them to notify a specific area by text or automated phone call, providing residents with the necessary safety information. Concerning our response time, several factors can affect them, including ongoing calls or incidents such as structure fires, wildland fires, or standard medical calls. However, we have systems in place to ensure the next available closest crew is dispatched to these emergencies as efficiently as possible. This applies not only to a potential incident involving the battery energy storage project, but to all emergencies the fire department responds to daily. We're fully committed to maintain the highest standards of safety and readiness. Environmental Impact Report, pages ES5 and 338, states there are no special materials required to respond to a fire event for the containerized BESS units. Is the county going to require a change in the language of this document to accurately reflect this major risk? Since we will not be fighting a BESS fire directly, our current firefighting gear should be sufficient. What we may need to do is upgrade our gas measuring devices for air monitoring for the specific gases that could be producing these fires. We're currently looking at some of the new meters for home battery systems and electric vehicles, which, if they cause a lithium-ion fire, we would need to monitor as well. For the most part, fires at this facility would be treated as a defensive fire, only protecting exposures. The fact is, we will not commit our firefighters into the facility unless there was an immediate life threat. Risk a lot to save a lot, risk nothing to save nothing is a motto here at the fire department. Also, remember that these containers are non-walk-in, meaning no people, not only no people are allowed, is that no people are going to be able to get into these containers because there's no space. It's full of electronics and batteries. Will air quality be monitored during and after any fire? If so, for how long and by whom? The fire department would initially monitor the air while on scene, and the applicant is to provide responders that are specialized in these systems. Will any special protective gear be required to protect firefighters? If so, who will be providing that? Our current protective gear should be sufficient. Have the effects of climate change, i.e. the worsening drought conditions, aridification, wind behavior, increased lightning, etc., been factored into the firefighting strategy? The fire department was concerned about these conditions long before BESS in the county. We cannot change this weather event, but we have taken steps to provide more safety for our staff. One example is our robust firefighter rehabilitation policy. Additionally, what climate change has truly caused is we have shifted from a fire season to a year-round fire risk in our state. This has been acknowledged and is contributing to different mitigation approaches. Who is responsible for the cost of the training and new equipment necessary to fight the fires and explosions? And should we be endangering our firefighters with extreme amounts of highly toxic chemicals? Firefighters are already exposed to many, if not all, of these harmful substances when we respond to structure fires or electric vehicle fires. We have policies and procedures to reduce the harm to our staff. Second sets of gear and industrial extractors are at the station. SCBAs to prevent inhalation of gases. Those are the masks that we wear during fire, self-contained breathing apparatus. Concerning our response time, several factors can affect them. But again, the question is, those highly toxic chemicals, we are already barreling some of them, and we are taking the proper measures and mitigation measures. What emergency planning does the county currently have in place to address major lithium-ion battery fires that may happen in our roads? These concerns are being addressed on the traffic congestion road closure side in the current rewrite of the emergency operations plan that is currently taking place by our Office of Emergency Management. What would neighborhoods do if New Mexico 14 or I-25 is closed for 24, 48 hours? Depending on the location, traffic would be diverted to seek alternate routes such as New Mexico 285 to New Mexico 41 or 42 or I-25 or New Mexico 14, all of which have access to I-40 and therefore able to reroute traffic depending on the location of the incident and emergency. Concern about gas line proximal to BESS installations. The Office of Emergency Management and responding officials would utilize the emergency response portal to identify and collaborate with pipeline owners before, during, and after an emergency. Where are you going to put thousands of evacuated people and the penitentiary inmates? Evacuated plans are also part of the rewrite of the emergency operations plan, along with implementation of evacuation zones. Collaboration with the New Mexico State Corrections Emergency Manager would also be available if needed. Thus far, no lithium battery fire has impacted densely populated residential areas. But what if? This will require massive increases in specialized equipment and protection for our emergency personnel. I feel it is too much to ask, and who will pay the millions required for actual protection? The best practice for fighting our BESS facilities to take a defensive posture and protect their exposures. This tactic does not require a great deal of specialized equipment and is a practice we currently use when the safety of our staff demands it. The fire department would not directly engage the BESS fire, but protect the surrounding area. I would expect the department to need equipment to alert monitor for hazardous gases produced by burning BESS components. I don't know the cost of this equipment, but I doubt it would be in the millions. Since the owner of the BESS system must respond with a team expert, it would stand to reason that their team would have the ability to monitor the environment. Will air quality be monitored during and after any fire? If so, for how long and by whom? There is a new draft. The fire department would initially monitor the air while on scene. Applicant is to provide responders that are specialized in these systems. And as far as there is a new draft hydrant listed, what is this? I think they're referring to the conditional use permit application that is at 30%. What is this? There will be, what is this? Where will it be located and where does the water come from? A draft fire hydrant will be attached to a 30,000-gallon water storage tank located near the access road that leads to the battery energy storage system inside that facility. Where the facility, not enclosed facility, but inside that fenced in solar farm with the northwest corner having 1 acre dedicated to battery energy storage system installations. Draft fire hydrants are used by fire departments to draft suction water from a storage tank for fire protection and mitigation measures. The ATAR review stated that the review had concluded that sufficient level of information has been provided to validate the issuance of a conditional use permit as it pertains to the reviewed fire and life safety codes. Santa Fe County Fire Department then offered their conclusion based on the ATAR review. ATAR doesn't get to make this conclusion, and the Santa Fe County Fire Department letter does not show any diligence to performing an assessment of their own. ATAR is the independent third-party review, not the totality of the Santa Fe County Fire Department fire and safety assessment. What is the demonstration and evidence that Santa Fe County Fire Department put in the effort in such a critical assessment of a utility scale BESS project? The fire department diligently adopted the latest edition of the International Fire Code and National Fire Protection Association 855 2020 edition on August 29th, 2023, by way of Santa Fe County Ordinance 2023-06. Weeks after the aforementioned adoption, the fire department received suggestions from interested stakeholders that the newer 2023 edition of NFPA 855 would be better suited to ensure the latest requirements on fire and life safety mitigation measures. The fire department responded by diligently and swiftly adopting the 2023 edition of NFPA 855 and subsequent new editions as they are published on December 13th, 2023 via Santa Fe County Ordinance 2023-09. The fire department has also attended BESS webinars and training courses. The fire department does not claim to be an expert on the BESS subject matter. Hence why Santa Fe County Fire Department retained the services of ATAR Fire to leverage the expertise of their personnel as it pertains to battery energy storage systems, fire and life safety aspects. We recognize that not every fire department can have the detailed expertise required across the totality of fire and life safety hazards that may be present in various projects. Similar to other jurisdictions' protocols, Santa Fe County Fire Department retained the services of an outside third-party engineering firm with specific technical expertise in BESS. This is commonplace for many fire departments, even those in large cities, as this method provides an economically prudent method of having specialized technical expertise available as needed, rather than retaining a large and permanent staff that burdens the county's limited funds. This also ensures financial prudency of our constituents' tax dollars. ATAR fire personnel are licensed fire protection engineers in the state of New Mexico and others, and collectively have been working in the fire protection engineering field for more than 40 years. They have specific expertise in battery energy storage systems, with the principal engineer for ATAR fire being a voting alternate on the National Fire Protection Association 855 Technical Committee, as well as being a technical member of battery-related product safety standards such as UL 9540, UL 9548, UL 9773, UL 1487, and CSA C801. ATAR fire personnel have written hazard mitigation analysis, performed third-party reviews, hazard mitigation analysis, and overall as energy storage systems projects, written emergency response plans, train over 100 fire departments personnel in hands-on energy storage systems response, and are experienced in the design of all safety systems related to energy storage systems. Both fire protection engineers providing support through ATAR Fire serve or have served as authority having jurisdiction for over 10 years, have experience teaching NFPA 855 and the International Fire Code, having taught NFPA 55 to over 600 authority having jurisdictions, i.e. fire marshals and engineers in 2024, and in reviewing project construction documents for BESS installations. ATAR fire personnel have presented at national battery safety conferences such as the 2024 Energy Storage Safety and Reliability Forum. Whereas the ATAR fire report concluded that issuance of the conditional use permit was reasonable based on documents submitted for review, the ATAR fire report did not state that the project was at this point compliant with the breadth of applicable codes and standards. The project construction documents still require full and complete development, which are not typically available during the COOP process. The COOP process grants the applicant the authority to pursue the development of project documents for construction. However, it does not grant the applicant a construction permit. The COOP application approval authority lies with the Santa Fe County Planning Commission or Board of County Commissioners. Should this COOP application be approved by the governing body, the fire department will exhaustively review in collaboration with the subject matter experts and require compliance with the highest level of safety in accordance with local, state, and national codes and standards. The full and complete construction document package must then be submitted for review and approval by the Santa Fe County Fire Department prior to project construction commencing. This is established in Chapter 1 of the Fire Code as adopted by the Santa Fe County Fire Department and by the Board of County Commissioners, as I stated earlier. The project documents that will be submitted for construction permit will be, again, rigorously, should this COOP approval go forward, rigorously evaluated for compliance with the adopted codes and standards, as are all projects within Santa Fe County. ATAR Fire's scope is for their expertise in the fire and life safety hazards specific to BESS installations. Santa Fe County personnel retain the additional project scope expertise in-house. The ATAR Fire report does not approve the COOP application, nor will future reports approve the construction drawing package. The retention of ATAR Fire by the Santa Fe County Fire Department ensures that fire protection engineers with specific experience, knowledge, and expertise in the BESS field are engaged to support the Santa Fe County Fire Department. This will ensure an elevated level of safety, scrutiny, and transparency of the project for our constituents. The fire department is knowledgeable in the fire and life safety hazards associated with BESS installations. However, we believe it was prudent in this case to take the extra steps of hiring outside experts who have a detailed and experienced level of understanding of these complex systems. Finally, the fire department is not recommending for or against this conditional use permit application. The ultimate purpose of this meeting is to engage with Santa Fe County interested stakeholders as described in the 2023 edition of the National Fire Protection Association 855 Annex G3, to hear their perspective and input on this matter and to ensure transparency. If you have other questions related to the fire department or any other departments not covered in this meeting, please submit them for our review. Please understand, however, that we will not discuss the specific application for the Rancho Viejo Solar Project. It is inappropriate to discuss a pending application with interested third parties outside of the public hearing framework, particularly when the applicant is not present. So thank you very much, and let us open it now for questions about the four main topics: hazardous mitigation analysis, emergency response plan, Office of Emergency Management, and fire department operations.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Fresquez. I'll be moderating this part of the meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help keep this part of the meeting as smooth and efficient as possible. To keep the conversation on track, each speaker will be limited to one question and a maximum of 2 minutes, which will be displayed on the screen. This limit will be strongly enforced to ensure everyone has the opportunity to participate. We also ask that you avoid repeating questions that have already been asked and addressed, as well as avoid questions answered on the presentation, so we can cover more ground and respect everybody's time. Additionally, please be aware that staff may break out into virtual private room at any time to discuss certain questions. Lastly, I want to acknowledge that the weather is inclement this evening. Many of our staff are still here in person and will still need to drive home in these snowing conditions. Let us all be mindful and do our best to keep things moving efficiently for everyone's safety. Thank you all for your cooperation and understanding. If you'd like to speak on this issue, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and I'll call on participants in order received. Right, our first speaker is Ashley Schnauer. Ashley, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just have, I have a question about the letter that ATAR issued and that Fire Marshal Blay agreed with. That they both, I'm quoting here, they concluded that a sufficient level of information has been provided to validate the issuance of a conditional use permit as it pertains to the reviewed fire and life safety codes, unquote. How much information is required to do the validation that you're talking about? Are you looking at validating the criteria for the conditional use permit, or are you looking at validating whether the project likely will comply with fire and life safety codes?
What we look at, Mr. Schnauer, is to make sure that at this conditional use permit application process, whether this would be a safe installation in Santa Fe County. As you know, this is a 30%, they've submitted 30% on their plans because they're not required to submit any further than that. But there are two documents or some documents that have been submitted directly to the subject matter experts that basically are relative to the safety of the test reports and And the tests and reports that have to be submitted to ensure that they meet nationally recognized standards. And at some point, I'm gonna let one of our subject matter experts have detail more his answer. I think he's more qualified to respond to this answer.
Yeah, hi,
Yeah.
hi, can you hear me? This is Nick here.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, hi, my name's Nick. I'm with Tar Fire. And so um, there's a variety of considerations that kind of went into that final determination, right? So there are still many, outstanding items as with any project, whether it's a new building or it's batteries, right? Um, you know, this is always a phased approach. And so, in the end, the applicant will be required to comply with every single code requirement within NFPA 855 and IFC, or they will not be permitted to proceed with their project. The items that we really honed in on that could potentially prevent, the CUP were the UL 9540 listing, UL 9540A fire testing, and an explosion analysis, because it's our experience and our professional opinion that if the applicant doesn't have those in progress or doesn't have a good handle on it, those are red flags, right? And so we worked thoroughly with the applicant, and we reviewed those documents, most of which are pretty much complete, in fact, and we deem them to be satisfactory. So that's not to say that there are other items, as you probably saw in the letter, that do need to be addressed and will be addressed in due time. So I hope that provides a little bit more clarification.
Thank you very much for answering that, Nick. Our next speaker is Randy Coleman.
Hello, I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so there were many, many questions that were submitted that answers weren't provided. I mean, I could go through a large list of them, but one of the ones that was very important was that the industry standard right now is that containers be 20 feet. And one of the reasons for that is to reduce the potential of exposure of a fire in a container to the quantity of batteries that the container has. Based on this standard, the 40-foot containers that AES is proposing to use represents twice that exposure to the number of batteries. And then when you take the location, the fact that the containers are located in pairs, and the admission in the HMA that should fire get away from any one container, it would likely engulf two. That's 80 feet of exposure of batteries in the AES design as it is right now, or 4 times that standard of 20 feet. And to add to that, AES has switched from one type of lithium ion battery to the NCA type of lithium ion battery, which is the most dangerous, the quickest burning, the hottest burning, the fastest burning lithium ion batteries of the 6 types available. Why was that question not addressed in the design? And why is cybersecurity in the electronic systems not addressed either?
Yeah, those are great questions. I can field 2 of them, but I can't field the cybersecurity question because NFPA 855 doesn't address that. So regarding the 20-foot container size, that's an interesting point. So the industry's there's no NFPA 855 says the maximum container size can be 53 feet. And that's because that is really what can be carried on a trailer, right? And so the industry has sort of settled on 20 feet, really because they find it to be a good size for transportation and also to meet the energy density that they need for these projects, right? So most manufacturers have a 20-foot container these days, and it doesn't really, in my experience, have anything to do with safety. It's more of a practical manner, and that customers are now just expecting a kind of a standard size. Now, the AES containers, they have a separation in between two 20-foot containers, so that is true. But there's nothing prohibiting them from doing that, and NFPA 55 does allow it. So, uh, holistically, we've reviewed the overall layout for NFPA 55 compliance as well as the fire test data. Now, regarding the chemistry, um, it is an interesting question. Some folks say that LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries, are safer. And my personal opinion, which I'm starting to trend toward, is that in fact, something we're seeing with LFP batteries is that they can off gas and they don't ignite when you have an explosion hazard. And so uh, I would rather have a fire than an explosion because an explosion can actually kill people or injure them, which is what happened in Arizona. And a battery chemistry that off gases but does not ignite is one that can be more of an explosion hazard. And so, in fact, I'm actually preferable to the fact that they're using NCA because their test data shows that it ignites and that we know what to do with that. Firefighters know what to do with that. We know how to handle that, right? So I don't want to put a firefighter in harm's way by creating an explosion hazard. So, NFPA 855 does not tell you what chemistry you should use, right? You can use any chemistry as long as you meet all the requirements of the standard. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I'm not sure who can answer the cybersecurity question, but I'll pass on the torch.
We don't have any answers to cybersecurity. Maybe we will consult with the Office of Emergency Management and see if they include that in their ongoing rewrite of the emergency operations plan.
Thank you again, Nick. Our next speaker is Kay Cooper Mead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't understand the battery issue here because they had originally NMC battery chemistry in the first proposal, and now they've changed it to the NCA. According to everything I've read, NCA goes into thermal runaway more often. So why pick a more dangerous battery when they could have had the NMC? So what is that about? Nick?
I'm not quite sure why they chose this particular chemistry. Again, there's nothing in any consensus standards, safety standards, telling them which chemistry they have to use. They can use whatever chemistry
Right.
they
I
want.
understand, but we should be looking at the safety of the battery very, very closely. This is a major, major issue. And I'm
Mhm.
surprised as the battery expert for the county that you don't address the battery at all in your ATAR fire review. So this is a big concern. And I think we should rely on battery experts to tell us, okay, if you had a choice, which one is safer? And wouldn't you pick the NMC battery over the NCA battery then in that scenario?
Well, we have to remember that the safety is not just the particular cell type, right? There are many, many layers of safety in energy storage systems.
But it's one of
So,
the major things that we should be concerned about in battery energy storage systems. The safe,
y-
that's for us, that's the paramount issue on this facility is safe. Of course. What
Yep.
else would it be?
And that was the whole purpose of this review, right? So
Right.
so in order to address that, what we've done is the applicant went and they did cell level testing, module level testing, unit level testing, rack testing on the exact cell that they're going to be using to evaluate its propensity for thermal runaway, its propensity to spread between cell to cell, and so on and so forth. And then in addition to that, we further evaluated the explosion control systems, which are actually twofold. So they're actually providing what above what is required by the minimum safety standards in several areas. And so that would be with an NFPA 68 system and an NFPA 69 system. One is for deflagration vents and one is for ventilation. So they're actually going above what is the minimum safety requirement there. And in addition, they're providing the Novec direct injection system, which they've demonstrated by essentially uh, lighting an entire container on fire and demonstrating that thermal runaway only propagates to a single cell. It doesn't actually spread, which in my professional opinion, I wish every single project in the country would do that. It's not required. So I personally believe that they are actually way ahead of other projects in the country by providing this Novec direct injection system. It's not required. It demonstrates via several large tests that they've done with third-party laboratories that if a single cell goes into thermal runaway, it will not propagate to a second cell, and that's huge. So
Thank you again, Nick. Our next speaker is Glenn Wickel.
Hi. Yeah, so regarding the two questions on air quality monitoring, in my notes I have for the first answer that there would be an emergency responder who specializes in air quality monitoring. But I have for the second answer that it's the applicant who is responsible for air quality monitoring. So I'm hoping you can clarify which or both of those are true and how that works. And then I'm wondering, is there a standard written procedure that defines where to place the monitors, the air quality monitors, and what thresholds are to be used for ordering evacuation and or shelter in place? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. As far as the first question, the air monitoring is going to be obviously monitored by the fire department initially, as we most likely will be arriving there before any representative from AES. Although this is going to be a manned facility by AES, so more than likely they will have monitoring in their facility. So at this point, we are developing standard operating procedures, standard operating guidelines within the fire department to address these issues. The emergency response plan is also a live document at this point, and in the event that AES personnel is not on site because it's a weekend, but keep in mind that they are monitored 24/7 by a remote monitoring company. They would still be able to dispatch within 15 minutes of an alarm, a general alarm signal. They would be within 15 minutes, which this is actually in the 2024 International Fire Code requirement. Right now, it's not in our 2021 International Fire Code requirement, but we will be required that from AES to within 15 minutes dispatch their personnel, and they will have to arrive there within a certain amount of time with their mitigation response team.
And to the further monitoring of the air, we would rely on our Office of Emergency Management to contact our federal partners if we deem that we would need a long-term monitoring system. And we would hope we would use their expertise on how to set up that system.
Our next speaker is Selma Eikelenboom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have three short questions. The first one is, hold on, let me put this on. The first one is that I understood that after 2025, due to its toxicity, Novec 1230 will not be produced anymore. So how are you going to solve that problem? The second question is the fact that certain standards are not required doesn't mean that it's the best option for this facility, given the unprecedented scale so close to residencies. And the third question is, how can you say there is enough information to validate insurance for a cup when UL 9540A is kept secret, the results, and that UL 9540 has not been completed yet? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I can take the first part on the Novec. So 3M, which has produced Novec, has decided to phase out production. But I can tell you that other companies have since started producing it. So with respect to a supply issue, that won't be an issue. And I can tell you that many federal agencies use that agent, and so it's going to continue to be produced. It'll just be by other manufacturers.
Yes, but that doesn't make it safe.
Um,
Please give us a few minutes or a few seconds to discuss the questions, and then we'll come back with an answer.
If I understood the second question, UL 9540 is in the process of being completed, but it will be completed before this case goes to in front of the planning, even the planning commission, which is the approving body. So the fact, like our subject matter expert said, the fact that they are working on it and they are making progress, it's enough to let us know that they will be completing these documents. If they don't, then they're going to be denied the application. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
Jama, I can just add one more point. So the applicant has completed all of the UL 9540 test data, and we've reviewed all of that. They've also completed all testing associated with the UL 9540 listing, which I've reviewed a draft report. They're just waiting on the laboratory to produce the final report. And coming myself from having worked at underwriters laboratories, these laboratories work at their own speed. So really the fact is we just don't have the final version in our hand. We have the draft results, which we've reviewed, and the laboratory has indicated that all of the tests have been passed.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Nick. Our next speaker is Dr. H.J. Hammond.
Hello. Okay, thanks. I have a really basic question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have worked with emergency response plans at the local, state, and federal level, trained at FEMA and CAL FIRE. And in my experience, a response plan is only as good as the number of drills and tabletops that you do to exercise it. So since we've had fires at other facilities like this, has someone like set that alarm off at midnight on a Saturday night and timed how fast those air monitors get there, how fast the fire department gets there? We've talked about a lot of water being available. How fast can it arrive? Doing an actual functional drill for response. And I'm asking this because I live very close to this facility. Thank you.
We will be referring this question to Brad Cole, who is our emergency manager for Santa Fe County. But I can tell you that should this COOP approval go forward and AES ends up building this facility, there's going to be some rigorous training and pre-incident planning taking place before this facility is commissioned. And that's when we would be performing those drills. But again, I don't want to speak for our emergency manager because they may have in their rewrite of their emergency operations plan, they may have other things to include.
Right, and it's real important that it's funded by the company because these drills are expensive because you're actually mobilizing these teams of experts that are in the response plan that are available on an instant, to respond. So these are expensive drills and they're different for every community. So I just want to know what Santa Fe has plans for. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Hamlin, this is Brad Call, Office of Emergency Management Director. I appreciate your question. When we discuss drills and we discuss preparedness, that starts, as you know, with the very basics of a tabletop and a get together and discuss the hazards, discuss the threats, and discuss the players that need to be present. So at the very beginning, the very basics will be addressed, and you start from the ground up. You start really what the hazard is, what the threat is, and again, who those players are supposed to be. Then you move to the next stage of active exercises where the players are brought into the field. Then you finally progress to a full-scale exercise. And you're right in saying that those can be expensive. That is part of our charter and part of what we are responsible for is helping and assisting organize these things and being a liaison to bring those players to the table. And as such, an organization would reach out, as OEM to all the different players, both fire, both law enforcement to help mobilize evacuations. And you're going to have different players participating at every single level. So this would not be taken lightly, and it would sometimes takes months to get these things organized. And as far as the cost incurred on these things, that can be expensive, but most of the time that's usually included in existing budgets for the most part. I know for my part, I will be glad to liaison with everybody involved in this, both fire, law enforcement, and a potential organization or company.
Thank you, Director Call. Our next speaker is Camilla.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have a request first and then a comment and a question. My request is for the presentation, everything was read so fast, the questions and the answers, that I know myself personally, I couldn't even keep up with what the answers were, hardly. So if it's possible, I think I might speak for most of us, could you send a transcript of the questions and answers so we have time or I have time to read them and understand what the answers were? And then my comment a minute ago, Mr. Bartlett, I think you had said AES had seemed to go above and beyond with their testing of the batteries or something to that extent. But that what I get from that is that they went above and beyond, so that's better than most companies. But the fact that they've already had, or they've had 3 battery energy storage lithium fires in the past 5 years, that says more to me than their rigorous testing. But nevertheless, my question is the Novec 1230 earlier. I think Mr. Blay had said that it's a gas form, but my understanding is Novec 1230 is a liquid form until it is dispersed in a cell, in which it then becomes gas. So I would like to know how much of this Novec liquid is in each container, the 40-foot containers, and in the event of a fire, in which I recently saw in a study like a month ago, approximately 1.5 million gallons of water on average is used for a 50 megawatt lithium ion BESS fire. How will all this contaminated water be collected versus draining off into our groundwater that thousands of us use to live out here?
Nick, do you want to answer the first question or the first comment?
Yeah, I can take the first part, and I sincerely appreciate the clarification. You're absolutely correct that it is in a liquid form, and then when it's discharged, it becomes obviously it's a gas. So thank you for that clarification. So to be honest, I don't know the size of the cylinder. I can go look that up, and we can get AES to provide that information. I have reviewed the 9548 test data in detail, and they did several tests demonstrating that the quantity they needed for safety. I'm not talking about environmental or PFAS or that topic, but for the ability to limit cell to cell propagation, they have validated the volume of the cylinder that they need for that to occur. So yeah.
And then my name is Ignacio Dominguez. I'm the emergency management coordinator for Santa Fe County. And in regards to the contaminated water that would potentially be going into the ground, what would end up happening in those situations is that emergency management would reach out to the state emergency operations center and work through them to get a hold of the environment department and have them come out and best assess what would be the next steps to be able to contain and mitigate this particular circumstance.
And as far as the questions being spoken to quickly and the answers as well, there will be a transcript available. I believe the video will be available as well on the website after the meeting.
Our next speaker is Carol Beetleman. Yes.
My question is in response to an answer that Nick gave about 15 minutes ago to a question from Kay Cooper Mead. I believe, Nick, you mentioned cell level testing results, and I wanted to say that the cell level testing results were included in a new hazard mitigation analysis document that was included with this new application, was not with the old one, but those cell level testing results include information on the composition, amount, and temperature of gas releases, but all that information has been redacted. And I wanted to press as to why information like this would be considered proprietary or trade secrets. Of course, the first time AES submitted their application, they redacted several critical safety documents, fire assessment documents related to BESS. claiming they were trade secrets. At some point, due to legal action, those documents were unredacted, but in this current application, the hazard mitigation analysis document is redacted with those cell level testing results. So I'd ask you why that should be considered proprietary, because that's important information for all of us to know in order to evaluate the safety. Thank you.
Now, I would defer to the county on the redaction of information and how to distribute that, how that's properly handled.
Yes, one of the questions that was submitted in writing was, did the applicants request trade secret protection for the proprietary data? And the answer was that the applicant simply notified the county that he considers the information to be proprietary and confidential. And as stated above, it seeks to avoid disclosure of the information. And the request will be made in a judicial proceeding and not to the county. The county will not make a determination regarding the protection or disclosure of such information. Also,
I understand that, but I think it's really important for us to be able to evaluate from a safety perspective.
yes.
All right, our next speaker is Dana.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to know if you acknowledge the existence of the above ground gas line that abuts the western edge of El Dorado. And if you don't acknowledge it, I'd like to know why it's continuing to be excluded from being considered as a hazard for this project.
Give us 1 second to discuss.
Sure, we have notified you on multiple occasions. We've notified the county about that. Could stop my clock.
Yes, this is Dominic Cisneros, Building and Development Supervisor with Santa Fe County. So we did address the location of the pipeline, and we did state that we would be reaching out to the utility owner to notify them of this project that is being proposed and discuss any, concerns that they may have with the location of this project going forward.
And also in regards to that, Santa Fe County has the availability to work through a company called Paradigm to be able to have access to any pipeline that is running anywhere in New Mexico, to have the information of the owner, what's being transmitted, as well as safety information and a 24-hour emergency line to be able to get a hold of anyone needed. And that information is shared with our first responders and available to them, as well as emergency management at any time.
Well, these are major gas lines. This isn't just a small residential gas line. These are major gas lines that are run there by New Mexico Gas.
Yes, ma'am. And also part of the Paradigm system is the availability for emergency responders to request a shutoff if needed, so that they do have electronic capabilities of shutoffs at different points throughout New Mexico.
We were told by emergency people here in New Mexico and Santa Fe that they would first have to come out to inspect and see what was going on. It would take them 20 to 40 minutes to get to this location, which is next to my home. And fires with our winds could come across in 7 minutes. So this is, there are a lot of hazards with this. And I'd like to know if you, the county staff, at all acknowledge that the AES project poses hazards to our health and safety, or are you simply preferring to pretend there none exist and to talk around all our concerns? We have been sending in concerns for over a year. The risks and the actual consequences. This project will be there for 35 years. To suggest that these things are not going to happen is wrong.
Thank you. I did add a minute to your time since we did take a break to discuss. So thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Carol Culver.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, maybe for a follow-up on what Ignacio said. Camilla brought up the point about the Novec chemical being a liquid, and I guess then it turns into a gas. But in any case, it does contain those PFAS chemicals, which is, I think, the main reason why 3M has decided they don't want to be involved in it anymore, involved in manufacturing it. And a lot of residents have been expressing the concern that Camilla expressed, that if there's a fire and thousands of gallons of water are needed, this chemical could get into the water and then leach into the ground. And we all depend on groundwater out here. And I was kind of surprised that Ignacio's response was, well, the county would call NMED and those folks would come out and evaluate it and attempt to determine how to contain it. It seems to me that that kind of plan ought to be made in advance, not something you evaluate after the accident happens or after a fire occurs, and that it should be incumbent on the company to actually make a plan for that and to figure out some kind of containment system. And I would be interested in Ignacio's response and maybe Mr. Blaze's response as well.
So part of that would also be addressed in the emergency operations plan, which is currently under its rewrite phase. So part of that would be addressed in that particular incident. However, we would still contact the environment department to make sure that the plan that's being utilized is the best practice and to make sure that there is no further, no further incident, or to make sure that it's being handled appropriately. And we would just utilize them more as a secondary measure to make sure that things are being handled appropriately. And you're absolutely right, there is a responsibility to the company as well. And those sort of things are handled or are addressed within emergency operations plan through the company, as well as through our emergency operations plan for those types of situations.
Thank you.
All right, that was the last question. That was the last person raising their hands. If you have not asked a question yet, please feel free to raise your hand. If you have asked a question already, we will not be calling on you. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Terry.
I had a question about how long battery fires can last, and in our conditions, I know that embers can be carried by the wind for up to 5 miles. So do Santa Fe County and surrounding communities have the resources to handle a battery fire plus any other fire sparked by that fire while simultaneously taking care of any house or structure fires in the county?
So my name's Jeff Carroll. I'm the Deputy Chief of the County Fire Department. Currently, we do have a limited resources, but we do rely on our neighboring fire departments to assist us in these events. We've had multiple events where we've had 2 or 3 structure fires at the same time. We'll always struggle with that, and I think every fire department will. And that's where we make our mutual aid agreements and our emergency action plans to kind of make sure that we can hold some of our units back in case of other emergencies, especially EMS and fire.
All right, our next speaker is KJP.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just have to say, I really, some of the responses to these, especially the questions toward the end, to Dana's comments about the safety issues that are so apparent, you know, the groundwater, the gas pipe, the response time, and then also the last speaker about um, wind can carry up to 5 miles. So, you know, keeping some resources available to handle wider spread fires, it just totally does not make sense to me how we could be prepared for any problem that comes up. And with the statistics of the AES issues that have gone on other installations that are similar, I cannot understand why we're even thinking about this proposal. It just should be not anywhere near the residences that it's being proposed to be near. I can't understand. I hope that you can say something that would make me feel a little better about the expertise you're bringing and why this is even still being considered.
I mean, it's a CUP.
So to talk about your question about why this is still being considered, due to the zoning of the property, it is an allowed use, as defined by the SLDC and the zoning matrix, an allowed use with the approval of a conditional use permit. And so that's why this application is still being considered at this time.
Thank you, Dominic. Our next speaker is Patricia Sill.
Go. I can't help but feeling like we are being guinea pigged. To have the issues around how hazardous this project is be redacted, and to have the answers from the people who are in power making these decisions is leaving me frankly terrified. Not only with the fires, but the PFAS. And I've been to the local fire department. It is sleepy and everyone is volunteer. I live by 2 fire departments. One, I've never seen any action there. it sounds like people are hoping to pass the buck so that they can get their college, term paper in and get an A. I feel like I don't know who all of you guys are, but I am not inspired by the lack of confidence that I've experienced here. I don't want to have to move. A lot of people in our community are already dealing with health issues. Why not go into the middle of nowhere that it doesn't affect our water, that doesn't burn our houses down? I've already made sure I have additional fire insurance because of the threat that you guys, this, what is it, $13.5 billion company that is like kind of powering over us. We are not guinea pigs. And I resent having to be in this position. I'm not inspired by the lack of responsiveness and the way the first person read through all of the issues. It was like impossible to follow. I don't know if there's anyone here who's tracking these conversations or if we're all just talking into the dark. And, because it seems like the county commissioner is all set to do it and Nick is all there. How old are you, Nick? I'm sorry. I do not trust the process happening here. And I think you need to have more than 35%, more like Bernalillo, who has 100% proven, not just all this guesswork. This is obscene and it's not fair. And I don't want this in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. Our next speaker is Alex. Alex, if you'll please unmute and begin speaking. Alex, I'll ask one more time. If you could.
So actually, this is Pat. And my question is about water usage. And we know that we have a serious problem of water levels. We have just our recent ballot that came out was looking for approval for additional water sources. In the Santa Fe back in last month, they talked about the utilities being underwater, and they specifically talked about the problems with the Santa Fe water usage. So what I'd like to know is all of this information that's going on about this project. Who is coordinating the water? How is the Office of Emergency Management doing it? How is the Santa Fe Fire Department doing it? Who is calculating all this? And if you're saying that you would bring in tanks to help this, what if we're in an evacuation process and there's no water, no roads available? So I need an answer about water usage. Who's controlling it? Who's managing it? Who's distributing it? And I don't think that the project can move forward until this is resolved.
Yes, thank you for your question and your comment. So there is no proposal for any on-site well on the property, nor the neighboring well will not be used as well. There is going to be a 30-gallon tank that will be on site that will be filled by the applicants due to a bulk water account that they do have with Santa Fe County. That's how they intend on filling that water tank.
As far as water supply for fire protection, not currently, the proposed plan is to have 30,000 gallons of water for fighting fire. Additionally, on a first alarm, the fire department would bring an additional 10,000, and a second alarm would bring an additional 5,000, and then after that, they would continue bringing water to maintain 250 gallons per minute for 2 hours. And as far as if in the event that everybody's evacuating, the fire department usually doesn't evacuate. We would be actually going to put out the fire while people would be evacuating.
I can help provide some additional commentary on the water usage. Todd LeBerge also supporting a tar fire in the county. Good evening, everyone. These have been outstanding questions, and the water question continues to come up. So the current strategy, which has been demonstrated in several of these issues, ESS installation fires, the current strategy is to let the container burn, and it's both shocking and frightening for everyone. And I understand that I live in a wildland fire area, so I understand the concern there. The way that the containers are laid out based on the fire test data that they have, it demonstrates we need to separate them this far apart. And that's what the NFPA 55 committee and the International Fire Code Committee, those are one of the requisite underpinnings of such an installation. They have to be separated in such a manner that should one ignite, if all the safety systems fail, should one of these containers ignite, and we've all seen News Chopper 7 floating around, that the fire won't spread. And so what the fire department does, and what we teach about this, is you stand off and do what we call exposure protection, or you may have heard the word go defensive, right? So what they would do is, in addition to ground safety and wildland fire mitigation and defensible space, right, you would provide exposure protection to other things that may be receiving an elevated level of heat, particularly, let's say, on a windy day and the flame length travels downwind a little bit. Thankfully, these containers are non-combustible, so we don't have what we call ember cast. So on a windy day, you're not going to have embers flying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away. That's more typical to a wildland fire. So because of the concerns of water usage, most of these facilities are typically installed where there is limited water: Texas, California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. That's why the strategy is to stand off and let the container burn. So not only do we not use our precious water resources, we aren't worried about excessive runoff. And in recent fires that have happened in large installations, the EPA has been doing monitoring, and their test data is indicating that water runoff for one of these fires, and it's surprising, is actually exceptionally low. It's less hazardous than even a typical house fire. But again, we save those precious water resources by letting the container simply consume itself, because you're not going to put a fire out in one of these. It's the way the chemistry works. So we let it consume itself. No firefighters are at risk. No personnel are at risk. Precious water resources are preserved. And that's why the container installations are spread out and there's minimum separation distances to ensure we don't have fire spread from container to container. I hope that helps alleviate some of the concerns about water usage.
Thank you, Mr. LeBerge. Our next speaker is Victoria Clark.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First responder mitigation guidelines, page 9 states, the BESS containers are adequately separated by approximately 22 feet, which meets FM datasheet 33, lithium-ion battery energy storage systems separation requirements. This is simply not true based on AES's pairing of containers only 3.5 feet apart. ATAR only mentions under comment number 63 of the 93 open issues that there's an inconsistency between documents. Can you tell me about what you're thinking about that, please? Following Todd's presentation.
Please give us a second to this. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
No, I can await Santa Fe County how you'd like to respond.
I'm sorry, Mr. LeBarge, what was that?
I can await your response, Santa Fe County, if you'd like to huddle first.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead and answer.
So when we reviewed the proposed CUP installation and we identified these consistencies, right? These are things that we want to understand as well. So the fire test data between containers, side to side, back to back, front to front, right? So these are one of the inconsistencies that we're looking for AES to provide us so we can perform the required review. And there's the full scale fire testing, when they do it, when they actually burn the containers to determine the potential for fire spread, they measure what we call heat flux, the radiant heat into something that's adjacent. That's the data that we need to better understand to even approve the proposed proximity container to container. For example, so other manufacturers of ES systems, they put them 6 inches apart, back to back, because they're insulated on the backside. So actually, several manufacturers do that, and one of them just did another test in China last week. So this is what we need to understand and to have that inconsistency ironed out. So we have factual empirical test data that substantiates the proximity of one container to the other. And if they don't have the test data to substantiate that, then we will not be recommending that Santa Fe County approve the installation as proposed, right? So that's why we need the additional data. And all of that will be moving forward through the actual construction project. As Fire Marshal Blais previously stated, they're only at what we call the 30% design stage. It's a concept of, we want to do this thing in this space. We have a lot more to go, but we want you to understand what our thoughts are. And that's one of the underpinnings of a conditional use permit is, we would like to do this thing in this area. Okay, we will allow you to continue to pursue development of that thing you want to do. It does not grant you approval to construct. It does not grant you a permit. And we are going to have several more questions and rounds of review, right? These things typically take several rounds of review to get correct, to where all the required fire safety items are addressed, right? And to the satisfaction of several people. That's why we have several people working on this project. You have a lot of professional review and second party discussions, right? So when we get those inconsistencies ironed out, we will have a better data to say, okay, this is consistent, this is safe, this does meet the required, the minimum codes and standards, and also the additional requirements placed by Santa Fe County. And if they don't make those requirements and they don't substantiate the distances they want to separate these things, they don't get approved and they don't get to construct it. It's really that black and white. They shall comply or they will not build. I hope that answers your question. I apologize if I didn't get to the totality of your question.
Thank you, Mr. LaBerge. If there is anybody that has not had a chance to speak and would like to, please raise your digital hand. Just a reminder, this whole meeting in its entirety will be posted on the Santa Fe County website tomorrow morning, as well as the transcripts of the presentation. Due to the inclement weather and the lack of hands being raised, we're going to adjourn early. Please keep an eye out for this meeting to be posted tomorrow morning on the Santa Fe County's website, as well as the transcripts. Thank you all for joining us.